Okay, thank you, Obehi. So my name is Isaac Inkum. Um, obviously, I'm a Ghanaian and an African. I am someone who is very much interested in research work. I like to build content. Very interesting content to share with people. Content that we can learn from and market. So for about 8 years now, I've been working on a movie project on Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I think that he's a personality that we have, especially as Africans, haven't taken much time to get to know his period, his contemporary, and his personality as an African leader. So I took it upon myself in concert with some colleagues of mine and one senior colleague called Mr. Boashi to work on an Nkrumah project. So for the past 8 years, this is what I have been doing or have dedicated my time in doing. Yes.
This is something really very interesting in that often time we say that we need to continue to revisit the story of our hero, and also because our the younger one that are growing up, they need to know this story. Of course, this story will not just jump into their head. They will only be able to know if artists like you, if people that are into content creation dedicate time to really evaluate this story. Because it is important. It is very, very important that we continue to feed our head with this information, because these are people that have laid the foundation upon our own history, our contemporary history, as it were. And so,
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you first begin to develop interest in history like this? Because these are, I repeat again, these are very important part of our civilization.
Yeah, exactly. So, Cicero, the philosopher, once said that when it comes to history, there are things that happen before we were born. There are things that happen way before our time. So, before you can appreciate the things that happened before we were born, you would need to consult history. And so, not to know what took place before you were born, as he said, is forever to remain a child. So, that aspect of information and trying to find out what has happened before you came to exist in a particular place, you would need to consult the document, that is the history. So I decided that, well, as an African, there are lots of things that we can find in our history books, but often we focus on little details. And if we want to be able to find out what really happened in terms of the decisions that former leaders and people who lived before our generation took, then we need to go and consult history. It's more like an intellectual or a knowledge oracle that people can scoop information from. That is why I decided that Nkrumah, especially when it comes to Africa's development or Africa's surge of independence, he's always in the picture. He's always a reference point. And often we haven't given enough time to look at him in particular and see what contributions, especially Nkrumah, made to Africa's development and Africa's independence. That is why I took it upon myself that as a young African, to appreciate what our former leaders did and to understand how far their choices and decisions have come to have influence in our generation, then we need to consult the history and find out exactly what they did and why they did the things they did to better our future and know that we can learn something from them so that in going forward, we can also do things in the right way and learn from their mistake.
Thank you very much for that, Isaac. Now, the question I'm going to ask you now before, then of course, we're going to move into the detail of the life of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Tell me a little bit about the project that you are working in. Let us understand it a bit. Give us a little bit background of this particular project you are working in.
Okay, so this project started when I was about exiting the university. I had done a 4 year program. In fact, I studied history. When I started my undergraduate program, I did history for 2 years. And when I was about exiting, I had a very good friend of mine, Kwesi Hayford, who is very interested in history. And he came up with the idea that, look, there's a lot of, information when it comes to Africa and our leaders that often we haven't paid attention to, that we can bring it up to movie screens for people to watch and appreciate what our leaders did. When you look at other countries like America, there's a whole collage of historical movies on Lincoln. There are movies on Roosevelt. Even in Africa, there's a movie on India Amin. There's a movie on Nelson Mandela. But when you look at Kwame Nkrumah, the foremost personality who fronted the agenda of independence, there's no movie about him. So we decided that, well, then we can do something about that. And that means we need to do research. We need to research the information and find out exactly what he did, and how we can be able to then, from the research, develop the content that can be a film script or a film screen. Screen script for people to come on board for a movie to be made out of it. And Obehi, I tell you, it's been such an overwhelming experience to know that as I speak to you, there's no single movie on Kwame Nkrumah. There's no single biopic on the person who started the whole independence agenda. And we felt that that is not good for Africa. And if Nkrumah were an American, I'm sure Americans would have done so many movies about him. So we decided that, look, let's do something, especially as young people. For once, let us change the narrative and tell the world that Africa can produce very good content. Africa can make good content out of its great leaders, and Nkrumah is one. And that is why I decided to jump on the project. And that is what I've been doing for the past 8 years.